Did you know the UK's national debt is now over £2.5 trillion? That's more than the entire value of the UK's economy. And here's the kicker. This isn't just some far-off statistic. It's a problem that affects you right now. The economy is in serious trouble, and if you've been feeling the squeeze on your wallet lately, you're not imagining it. From soaring energy prices to rising inflation, it's getting harder for families to keep up. But why is this happening? Why are wages stagnant while costs keep climbing? Why is the government struggling to manage its massive debt? In this video, we're going to break down 10 shocking reasons the UK economy is on the brink. You'll learn how Brexit, the housing crisis, job insecurity, and even climate change are all playing a part in this economic chaos. But wait, this isn't just about doom and gloom. We're also going to explore the real solutions you need to understand how to survive and even thrive in these uncertain times. From protecting your finances to making smart decisions about your career, this video will give you practical tips to stay ahead of the curve. Stay tuned, because the information we're revealing might just change how you think about your future. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. The UK economy is facing a crisis, but there's still time to act. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. Number 1. Rising inflation. One of the biggest contributors to the UK's economic crisis is the skyrocketing inflation rate, and it's hitting everyday people hard. Inflation, at its core, is when the general prices of goods and services rise, leading to a decrease in purchasing power. It means that your money doesn't go as far as it once did, and that's becoming more and more obvious as we watch prices climb across the board. From your weekly grocery shop to gas at the pump, inflation is making everything more expensive. In the last few years, inflation in the UK has reached levels not seen in decades. According to recent reports from the Bank of England, inflation surged above 10% in 2022, marking its highest point since the early 1980s. This dramatic rise in prices has been driven by a combination of factors, including global supply chain disruptions, increased energy costs, and of course, the ongoing economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. But perhaps one of the most significant factors has been the energy crisis, fueled by geopolitical tensions and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has sent gas prices soaring and directly impacted household budgets. What makes this even worse is that wages aren't keeping up with inflation. While the cost of living has been climbing, wages have remained relatively stagnant, meaning people's income isn't stretching as far as it used to. Families are feeling the pinch, choosing between essentials like food and heating, and in many cases, cutting back on luxuries just to make ends meet. Inflation doesn't just affect what we buy, it also impacts the cost of borrowing. Interest rates rise in response to inflation, which means mortgages, loans, and credit card payments all become more expensive. This creates a cycle of financial strain, making it difficult for many to save or invest. The relentless increase in prices is something every UK household is feeling, and it's one of the primary drivers behind the current economic uncertainty. Number 2. Unpredictable energy prices. Energy prices are another massive reason the UK economy is in serious trouble, and they've become a major source of stress for households across the country. Over the past few years, the cost of gas, electricity, and heating has skyrocketed, and it's showing no signs of slowing down. The UK, like many other countries, is grappling with soaring energy bills, leaving people to make tough choices between staying warm or paying for other essentials like food and transportation. One of the primary reasons for these sky-high energy prices is the UK's reliance on imported energy. The country imports a significant portion of its gas and electricity, meaning any disruption in global supply chains or changes in international energy markets sends shockwaves through domestic prices. Global energy demand has surged in recent years, and when countries like China and India increase their consumption, it drives up prices worldwide. On top of that, the UK's energy sector has been hit hard by geopolitical tensions, particularly Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The war has caused widespread disruptions in gas supplies, further fueling the rise in prices. Additionally, the shift toward renewable energy sources, while crucial for the planet's long-term future, has caused some short-term instability. The infrastructure needed to generate and distribute renewable energy, like wind and solar power, is still catching up to the demand, meaning reliance on more traditional, cheaper energy sources is still necessary. However, with the cost of fuel increasing globally, these price hikes are inevitable. For UK households, this has meant dramatically higher energy bills, often by hundreds of pounds every month. The impact has been felt particularly in the colder months, where heating costs become a significant part of a family's monthly budget. Even with government efforts to provide energy subsidies, many people are still struggling to cover these rising costs. With no quick fix in sight, energy prices remain one of the most pressing issues contributing to the economic instability in the UK. Number 3. Stagnant wages and declining purchasing power. Another critical issue driving the UK economy into serious trouble is the growing disparity between wages and the ever-increasing cost of living. For years now, real wage growth has been stagnant, and this has left many working people struggling to maintain their standard of living as prices continue to rise across the board. In basic terms, real wage growth means how much your earnings increase relative to inflation. While the UK's average wage may have risen modestly, it has consistently failed to keep pace with inflation, meaning workers are effectively earning less in terms of purchasing power. In 2022, for example, wage growth was outstripped by inflation, which meant that many workers were taking home less in real terms than they had in the past. This makes it harder for families to make ends meet, particularly when the cost of essential goods and services, like food, transportation, and housing, has risen sharply. The stagnation of wages has been especially felt in sectors that rely heavily on low-paid or part-time work, such as retail, hospitality, and logistics. Many of these workers have not seen their paychecks grow in line with rising costs. Meanwhile, even for workers in higher-paying industries, salary increases have not been sufficient to offset the inflationary pressure on their finances. As a result, people are forced to stretch their budgets thinner and thinner, cutting back on everything from discretionary spending to savings, which makes it harder to plan for the future. This decline in purchasing power doesn't just affect what we buy today. It also has long-term consequences. When wages aren't growing fast enough, it becomes harder for people to save for retirement, invest in their children's education, or even secure a home. Without real wage growth, many are stuck in a cycle where the basic costs of living eat up more and more of their income, leaving little room for advancement or financial security. The impact of Brexit on trade and investment. Brexit, the UK's decision to leave the European Union, has created significant challenges for the economy, with far-reaching consequences for trade and investment. While the idea of sovereignty and independent decision-making sounded promising to many, the reality has been a complex and costly affair. The UK's exit from the EU has introduced a series of trade barriers and logistical hurdles that are not only raising costs, but also reducing the flow of investment into the country. One of the most significant effects of Brexit has been the reintroduction of customs checks, tariffs, and regulatory changes that complicate trade between the UK and the EU. The UK had enjoyed frictionless trade with EU countries for decades, but post-Brexit, the new trade barriers have made it more expensive and time-consuming to import and export goods. This has particularly impacted industries that rely on the seamless movement of goods, such as manufacturing, agriculture, and retail. For example, UK farmers have seen their produce face higher tariffs and additional paperwork, making their goods less competitive in the European market. Additionally, Brexit has led to a sharp decline in foreign direct investment (FDI). The EU was once a significant source of investment into the UK, as it offered businesses access to a single market of over 500 million people. With Brexit, that access was no longer guaranteed, and many companies have re-evaluated their investment decisions. As a result, the UK has seen a drop in both EU and global investment, impacting economic growth and job creation. This reduction in investment is particularly evident in industries like tech, finance, and research, which were once major drivers of growth in the UK. With Brexit limiting access to European talent and funding, these industries are now facing stiff competition from other European nations that remain part of the EU's single market. The consequences of these changes are still being felt, and the economic impact of Brexit is expected to be a long-term challenge for the UK. Number 5. Housing crisis and skyrocketing costs. The UK's housing crisis has become one of the most pressing issues contributing to the country's economic troubles. Whether you're trying to buy your first home, rent, or even find an affordable place to live, the soaring costs are causing significant financial strain for millions of people. For many, housing costs are consuming a larger share of their income, leaving little room for anything else, from savings to discretionary spending. And the problem only seems to be getting worse. One of the main drivers of this crisis is the skyrocketing cost of property. Over the past 2 decades, house prices in the UK have more than doubled, outpacing wage growth by a significant margin. For first-time home buyers, this has made getting onto the property ladder nearly impossible. In many areas, particularly in cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham, house prices have reached eye-watering levels. The average price of a home in London, for example, has soared to over £500,000, making it unaffordable for many, even with stable, well-paying jobs. For renters, the situation is no better. Rent prices across the country have been climbing, and some regions have seen rent increases of 10 to 15% in a single year. This is especially burdensome for those in urban areas, where housing supply remains limited but demand continues to rise. In fact, the growing gap between wages and rent prices has forced many people to spend an unsustainable percentage of their income on housing, leaving them financially vulnerable. This housing affordability crisis is also contributing to wealth inequality. While homeowners benefit from the appreciation of property values, those without the means to buy are left to cope with rising rents and an increasingly unaffordable market. As a result, the dream of owning a home is becoming out of reach for younger generations, further contributing to the UK's economic instability. To address this issue, the government needs to take decisive action to increase affordable housing supply and regulate the rental market. Number 6. Unstable job market and job insecurity. The UK job market is experiencing significant instability, and job insecurity has become a growing concern for both workers and businesses alike. The traditional job market that many people relied on is shifting rapidly, and the changes are leaving many workers in limbo. From automation to the rise of gig economy jobs, the landscape of employment is evolving in ways that are making long-term job security harder to come by. One of the key factors driving this instability is the impact of automation and artificial intelligence. While these technologies can improve efficiency and productivity, they are also replacing jobs, particularly in sectors like manufacturing, retail, and even customer service. According to recent studies, automation is expected to displace a significant portion of the UK workforce in the coming years, and many of these roles are unlikely to be replaced by new jobs in the same industries. As a result, many workers are finding themselves at risk of redundancy, with few opportunities to transition into new fields without significant retraining. Additionally, the rise of the gig economy is contributing to job insecurity. While gig work, such as driving for Uber or delivering for food services, offers flexibility, it comes at the cost of stability and benefits like healthcare, paid leave, and pensions. Gig workers often face uncertain hours, low pay, and a lack of long-term job security. This is particularly concerning in a time when living costs are climbing, and people are seeking more stable, predictable sources of income. On top of these shifts, the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic has left many industries in disarray. Despite efforts to recover, sectors like hospitality, retail, and tourism are still struggling with reduced demand and ongoing staff shortages. For many people, job security feels like a distant dream, adding another layer of economic uncertainty to the already fragile situation in the UK. Number 7. Public debt and government spending. Public debt and government spending are two crucial factors that are adding fuel to the fire of the UK's economic troubles. While governments typically run deficits to stimulate growth or weather crises, the UK's growing debt has reached alarming levels, placing significant strain on the country's financial future. The national debt is now approaching £2.5 trillion, which is over 100% of the UK's GDP, meaning the country owes more than it produces in a year. This puts the UK in a precarious position, as servicing this debt requires an increasing amount of public spending. The rising public debt is largely a result of decades of borrowing, but it has grown particularly fast in recent years. The UK government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic led to an increase in borrowing, as funds were needed for emergency health services, job support programs, and economic recovery plans. While these measures were necessary, the long-term financial impact is still being felt. Interest payments on the national debt are a significant and growing portion of government spending, meaning less money is available for other crucial areas like infrastructure, public services, and education. Government spending cuts or tax hikes may be necessary to manage this debt, but that comes with its own set of consequences. If taxes are raised, it could put even more pressure on already struggling households, reducing disposable income and further stifling consumer spending. On the other hand, austerity measures, such as cutting public services, could lead to further social instability and dissatisfaction with government policies. This rising debt also limits the government's ability to respond to future economic crises or invest in critical sectors like healthcare and technology. The need to balance the books while meeting the demands of a growing population makes public debt and government spending an ongoing challenge that will continue to hinder the UK's economic recovery and long-term stability. Number 8. Declining global economic influence. The UK's once dominant position in the global economy has been gradually eroding, and this decline in economic influence is playing a significant role in the country's ongoing economic struggles. The post-Brexit landscape, combined with the rapid rise of emerging economies and shifts in global power dynamics, has placed the UK at a disadvantage. Historically, the UK was a global financial hub, a key player in international trade, and a source of innovation. However, the changing tides have diminished its standing on the world stage. One of the primary reasons for this decline is the UK's decision to leave the European Union. While Brexit was meant to restore sovereignty and foster new global trade deals, the reality has been far more complex. The UK's exit from the EU has isolated it from a single market of over 450 million people, and the loss of frictionless trade has made it more difficult to attract investment. The UK now has to negotiate its own trade deals, many of which are less favourable than the agreements it previously enjoyed as part of the EU. Additionally, emerging economies like China and India are rapidly gaining global influence, and the balance of economic power is shifting. These nations, with their large populations and fast-growing markets, are becoming major drivers of global trade and investment. As a result, the UK is finding it more challenging to maintain its leadership in sectors like finance, technology, and manufacturing. The UK's economic influence is being overshadowed by the expanding economies of the East, leaving the country to compete for a smaller share of global markets. This decline in global influence means the UK has fewer opportunities to attract investment, establish trade partnerships, and exert economic power. For businesses and workers, this translates into fewer growth opportunities and a more competitive, uncertain future on the world stage. Number 9. Strain on health and social care. The UK's health and social care system, once hailed as a model for universal care, is now under immense strain, further contributing to the country's economic woes. The National Health Service, NHS, while still a cornerstone of the UK's welfare state, is struggling to meet the demands of an ageing population, rising healthcare costs, and a shortage of workers. This strain not only affects the quality of healthcare, but also puts financial pressure on the government and households alike. One of the main issues contributing to the strain is the increasing demand for healthcare services. As the population ages, there is a higher incidence of chronic diseases, disabilities, and long-term care needs. This has led to longer waiting times for appointments, surgeries, and emergency care, which has, in turn, reduced the overall efficiency of the system. The NHS is working under constant pressure, but the resources, both in terms of funding and workforce, are simply not enough to keep up with the rising demand. Moreover, the NHS faces significant staff shortages, with an estimated 100,000 vacancies across the system. Many healthcare workers have left the NHS due to burnout, underpayment, and challenging working conditions, while others have been dissuaded from joining due to uncertainty around Brexit and immigration policies. This shortage of healthcare professionals leads to overworked staff, lower morale, and delayed care, all of which contribute to the economic burden. The social care sector is equally overwhelmed. With many elderly individuals needing assistance with daily activities, the demand for social care services has soared. However, there is not enough funding or capacity to meet these needs, leaving families to pick up the slack or face long waits for services. This combination of pressures on both the health and social care sectors not only reduces quality of life for many, but also strains public finances, making it harder for the UK to achieve long-term economic stability. Number 10. Climate change and environmental costs. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It's here, and its impact is adding significant economic strain to the UK. From extreme weather events to rising energy costs, the environmental challenges we face are directly tied to the country's economic struggles. As the UK grapples with the consequences of a changing climate, the cost of inaction becomes more apparent, and the financial burden grows heavier. One of the key economic challenges posed by climate change is the increasing frequency of extreme weather events. Flooding, heat waves, and storms are becoming more common, and these events disrupt not only daily life, but also businesses and infrastructure. For example, in 2020, floods caused widespread damage to homes, roads, and businesses across the UK, resulting in billions of pounds in repair and recovery costs. These weather-related disasters strain government resources and delay economic growth, as funds that could be used for investment in public services or infrastructure are redirected to disaster recovery. Moreover, the transition to greener, more sustainable energy sources is essential for reducing the UK's carbon footprint, but it's not without its costs. While renewable energy sources like wind and solar are vital for a sustainable future, the infrastructure needed to support them is expensive to build and maintain. The shift away from fossil fuels has also led to higher energy prices in the short term, as the UK works to reduce its reliance on imported gas and coal. These price hikes directly affect households, pushing more people into energy poverty and adding to the overall cost of living. The cost of climate change also extends to agriculture and food security. Extreme weather patterns, like droughts and floods, reduce crop yields and disrupt food production, leading to higher food prices. As the cost of food increases, it further strains household budgets and widens the gap between the wealthy and those struggling to make ends meet. Addressing climate change requires significant investment, but the longer we delay, the more expensive the consequences will be. The UK's economy cannot afford to ignore the environmental costs any longer. So, there you have it. the 10 crucial reasons why the UK's economy is in serious trouble. From rising debt to the devastating impact of Brexit, from skyrocketing energy prices to the strain on our healthcare system, these issues are stacking up fast, and it's clear that action is needed. But here's the thing: the power to make a change starts with us. Understanding these problems is the first step toward finding solutions, and it's up to both individuals and policymakers to make the right decisions. Now, it's your turn. Which of these economic issues do you think is having the biggest impact on your life? Or maybe you've experienced some of these challenges firsthand. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your perspective. Let's get a conversation going, because these are issues we all need to think about. If you found this video helpful, smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just one click helps us continue creating content like this. It means the world to us. Let's tackle these big issues together and keep the conversation going.